This is all about Marta, my sister Marta. Everything that I can recall about Marta. Of course, she was born 14 months before I was born, so I don't personally know too much about that, but I do know a few things I was told by our mother. She got pregnant when my father, who was in the Russian front, came home for, I guess I don't know what they call it, a retreat, but on leave. He was on leave. And then he had to go back, so he actually wasn't there when Marta was born. So that I know because my mother had told me that she was alone giving birth to my sister. And that she looked very much like my father instead of her side of the family. The Moros, actually back then my father's name was Meyerhofer, and that was before he had to change his name. So that period of time was, that was the last 2 years of the Second World War, and all the craziness that women were experiencing because of the atrocity of the war zone for the men, and the reverberance of that, either by enemy soldiers or by our own soldiers being in that revved up into war. That was the atmosphere. It's very important in Marta's evolution into a woman, a mother, and a grandmother. And as it was for her mother and her grandmother. So this is a very inherited life. So my benefit of all of that was because 14 months later I was born, and of course I've shared the story that I was born actually during the first moment of the bombing, the first bombing of the civilian side of Budapest. There has been some bombing of military things, but not for the civilian, targeting the civilian. And she was caught in that at the moment of delivering. So for her, she already had a baby and all that other stuff that's been going on, and now a baby coming in to the bombs. So why that's important is then the year following before the war ended, it was a lot of being in bomb shelters with only my mother and my sister. So she would have to tell you how she felt about having me as a little brother. But I can tell you how I felt about her being my bigger sister and how I felt about her. It was going back to memories that go beyond that feeling of being the little brother of Marta, feeling protected. Even when, and I, as far as I remember, she would help make me sandwiches, or she was treating me like, I was her doll. She didn't have any dolls, by the way. So I guess I was the benefit of being her little brother that she loved to take care of. And I'm sure my mother appreciated that. And so that was our relationship in so many wonderful ways that was just really like, that was normal to me. So that feeling of my sister being there for me was really the steadiest thing in my life, because my mom did leave, they got divorced, and then, you know, life went on in different ways, and our parents had different choices, but she was a constant to me. She was my rock. And I can only tell you that from my perspective, because that was the beauty of it, is just feeling safe and loved. And actually physically giving and sharing and helping, you know. I don't mean monetarily, physically, or with items. I don't mean that. I mean in helping and doing and being there. That I really got from my sister, because that's really how I've got all of that from her, and I still do it. So this, of course, after they got divorced, and we had John Joseph Sr. Come to the house, and Tommy was born, and all of that was because my father's desire to, instead of putting strangers in like the government was going to do because of the housing shortage, he decided to take in my mother and John, and then Tom was born. And my father was such a loving dad, but he was especially loving to Marta. And Marta was really closer to Apu, to my father, than to my mother. And so that evolution of us growing up from, you know, after the war, after the bomb shelters, and but in that post-war environment of Budapest, in a very lucky place up on Rose Hill, Rose Hill, in Budaside, and growing up with a few very similar aged other children in the house, and who actually, one of them is still alive. In fact, that's the one that Marta, my sister, was closest friends with. Dana Zsuzsa was her name, is her name. And she had a younger brother named John, who was closer to my age. And so the four of us were in this fairly tight group. There were others, but these were the close four. So my sister and I grew up in that environment in Hungary until the revolution.